Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank Harry and the campaign and all of you for coming out this evening. Obviously, you have a great passion about the issue of how we can make government work better. I know that that's really been the mantra of the campaign, and Harry, compliments to you and everyone who's been involved in helping orchestrate this event and other events, many of which I've had the great opportunity to be a part of. We share a common goal. How can we make government work better? What can we do to make government work smarter? A little bit about myself, only because I think it's germane to explaining to you some of the things that I think can work. I started in government as a councilman in Highland Park. How many of you are out of Middlesex County, outside of Middlesex County? Oh, good. Started as a councilman in Highland Park and then became mayor. My passion for shared services goes back to 1992. I was mayor of Highland Park at the time, and we had a water and sewer department that was costing our taxpayers about 7 cents on the tax dollar. That was a lot in those days, 20 years ago. We were trying to figure out how we could save money. We had a water and sewer meter reading department that would go every quarter and read the meters. Probably a lot of your towns do the same thing. And I wanted to figure out how we could do it better. So one day I was driving to the office and I said, PSE&G, they're out every day. If they're going into the home to read the electric and gas meter, why can't they just look at the water meter and write the number down for us? So I called PSE&G, and you would have thought that I asked them to move heaven and earth. The answer literally was from the vice president of PSE&G, and he's no longer with the company. He's retired, but he laughs about it when we see each other every once in a while. And Frank Lucchese, who's still with PSE&G, was involved back then. And when I asked the question, they looked at me and they said, "You want to do what?" I don't know, I'll have to get back to you. Well, it took us 19 months to work through the efforts of trying to get PSE&G to do that. There were union issues, because actually at one point, and I'm certainly in favor of unions, but it's an interesting point to raise, they said they had to go back because now they had to tell the individuals who were reading the meters, look here, and then you also have to look over here. And it literally got down to that. In addition, they had to reprogram the little handheld meters that they had to be able to enter in the data. Why did I tell you the story? Well, it took 19 months, but 19 months later, we had an agreement, the first of its kind in the state. In fact, we even received an award from Harriet Durman. Maybe some of you remember that name. She was DCA commissioner at the time, for innovation. And we implemented it. We found jobs for the 2 individuals who were affected. One became a police officer, is still a police officer in Highland Park today. The other went into an administrative position that was open. We saved $130,000 a year. We looked like heroes. That was the birth for me for shared services, realizing that if you want to get creative and do things differently, you have to think outside the box. You have to think beyond your borders. You have to think outside of what is the norm. And you have to be willing to try. Now, not every idea is a good idea. I could give you, if we had more time, a list of those that didn't work so successfully. But the point of it is that you have to at least be willing to make the effort. Now, I'll tell you, and we've talked a lot today, I think what Mr. Caprio shared with us were great statistics and information, because that's the real numbers. That's the heart and soul of what it all comes down to. But the truth of the matter is, and you may find this interesting, I believe that my school should increase school size, reduce teachers, and we should have less police officers and merge all the police departments. Isn't that a great statement? Just don't do it in my town. Isn't that the problem? That's what we have to overcome. It all sounds great until it affects you. It all sounds wonderful until it's in your neighborhood. Until that police officer who might be affected by this idea merger comes and knocks on your door, comes to the senior citizen organization and says to them, you know, you won't have the same response. We're not going to know your town as well. When you call for help, some dispatcher in another county is going to be answering the call, and he's not going to be able to find your home. And at that point, I don't call it political, call it emotional. The emotional element takes over, and the dollars all of a sudden don't become as important. So when we sit in forums like this, it's easy to talk about the distillation of, well, that works, that's what we should do, and that works. But when it comes down to doing it in your own backyard, you remember the old NIMBY phrase, not in my backyard? It applies more today than it ever did to nuclear fission or recycling issues or landfills. It's a real issue and it's a real element. One of the reasons why I believe, and I've been doing this for 20 years, I am founder of the New Jersey Shared Services Organization and Association, which was created a number of years ago. And it is a wonderful organization. I encourage you to go to njsharedservices.org. On njsharedservices.org, you will see, if you want best practices, a list of every county, the practices that are initiated in those counties. And njsharedservices.org is a wonderful group of individuals that started a number of years ago, back when Joe Roberts was Speaker of the Assembly. I had approached him at one point and asked him, as an advocate for shared services, that we needed county shared service coordinators in New Jersey. To his credit, this isn't a political statement, it's just reality. He took that idea and he said, you know what, I think you're right, that can work. And I said, the reason we're not getting shared services to work in the state is because we don't have boots on the ground. We don't have anybody who's really driving the train every day to make shared services happen. Now, Mark Pfeiffer, my good friend for 30 years, I guess we've known each other more, probably 25 at least. I used to pester him constantly about these issues. What can we do? We created the shared service coordinators at the county through legislation, and I believe, and I don't think anyone can really refute this, during that 3-year period in particular that shared service coordinators initiated throughout the state, we had more effort in shared services than we had ever seen before in New Jersey, and more successes. There was also another important element to it. There were ready and REAP dollars and share dollars provided by the state to help foster these kinds of programs. Studies, consultation, seed money to get things going. That's gone. That is off the map. Mr. Capra mentioned about caps, 2% caps, budget constraints, reduced economy. Mayors and councils in small towns that do this part-time, that are getting some of them a whopping salary of $300 a year, what the state is asking them to do is run your town, do all of this, have less money, less resources, and by the way, you better go out and actively figure out where those shared services are, or we're going to come in and we're going to merge your town because we know better. I don't actually think that that's the approach. I think the best approach is to do it through work and effort and communication. The state, and I say it respectfully, whether it's Democratic or Republican, and I've argued with all kinds of administrations over the last 10 years, has never earnestly provided the resources to communities to really talk about sharing services and regionalizing. As a sitting freeholder, and I've been a freeholder for 15 years, I have never, ever been approached by the state as an official to say, what can we help you to be more efficient in your county? Or, how as a county can you help us at the state? Or, as a county, how can you help your communities and what can we do to help you do that? Now, isn't that a little confounding? Yet, there will be legislation and this intimidation to force mergers and to force consolidation. It's the wrong effort. Best practices come through good cooperation. In Middlesex County, we have a slew of county services that we provide, and we've crossed the border with other counties for medical examiner, juvenile detention. We're generating $2 million a year by providing juvenile detention services to 3 other counties. A medical examiner program with Monmouth County makes us money and saves them money. We're looking at Somerset County to do ballistics laboratory sharing and training for our police officers. We're also providing in-county through our county to our municipalities. Our fire marshal is now, this is a new one that you may be able to take back to your county, providing fire inspection services to our municipalities. We're keeping the fees, they're getting the inspections, we share the fines, and everybody is happy. We're doing it in 4 towns now, and it's growing every day. We also see an opportunity to do that in housing inspections, perhaps at some point. It is still a slippery slope whenever you talk about staff, personnel, and downsizing, but the services are going to be there to at least offer. And that's part of the responsibility of what county government is supposed to do, be able to offer those services. The one thing that I think that's critical that's missing, and one thing that perhaps you can advocate for, I want to make 2 points and then I want to close because I don't know how much time I'm allowed, but I hope I have 2 minutes to do 2 points. Number one, what's critical and what's been lacking for years and still lacks today is good communication. Now, I know that Mark will smile when he hears me say this, but I've been advocating for 5 years, and maybe, Harry, this is something that the campaign can advocate for. The state of New Jersey, and Ms. Malou, perhaps you can help. We need a portal. We started working on one 5 years ago. It was called Gov't. The purpose of that, and we worked on that for almost 3 years, and then funding was cut, unfortunately, when the new administration came in, and that's not a political comment, it's a reality. The funding was cut, and we were not able to actually see it succeed. What I have been working for years with the core group of people is creating a portal of communication where every municipality, authority, utility, and county could be online communicating. The reason why we don't share services and buy more cooperatively is because it's so difficult to talk to each other. Think for a minute, if you were the mayor, sir, of a small community and you wanted to go out and buy a cherry picker truck, if you could go onto a portal, type in what you were looking for, and all of a sudden you find out that Bergen wants to buy one, and Maplewood wants to buy one, and Hackensack is looking for one, and now all of a sudden one of you steps up to the plate and says, you know what, wait a minute. I'm going to buy one by myself for $85,000. Let's buy 12 and buy them for $60,000. It's communication that's lacking. I may be looking for a shared service coordinator, better yet, a recreation director, a part-time person in my health department. Through communication, I may find out that 4 towns over from mine, there's a health director there that only wants to work part-time, and maybe work in that town 12 hours and work in mine for 18. I don't have to fill a full-time post. I can do it on a part-time basis. But without a resource and an ability to be able to communicate and reach out, that's never going to happen because we're too isolated from each other. And the websites that are provided at the state don't allow that type of private communication and dialogue because many of these things are personnel related. So that's important. Last item I'll leave you with, and then maybe we can open up for questions later, and I can share some other ideas with you. We're talking about the problems that exist, and again, Mr. Caprio did a wonderful job. I want you to focus on one item, and again, Harry, I hope you don't mind, I give you a couple of tasks as a result of this as well. Not that you don't have enough already on your shoulders, but we talked about police. Police, the big expense. I think the number was 20.7%, if I'm not mistaken. If you saw the line above that, it's fire and EMS, 6.3%. We never talk about that. You know why? Because it hasn't affected us yet. For the last 3 years, I've been advocating at the state level that the way that we can have a real control on costs is to stem the tide of future costs. We already have police out there. It's 20.7%. And as creative as we're going to be, we're going to incrementally or marginally be able to reduce it, perhaps, if the political will is there. But is 20.7 going to go down to 19.5, 18.5? If we're highly efficient, Mr. Caprio, maybe we go down to 17% if the whole state all of a sudden became one police department. Highly unlikely. But if we don't watch the fire and EMS number, that number is going to go up exponentially. We have a volunteer base in the state of New Jersey that represents about 50,000 people in fire and EMS. If only 10% of those people, actually it's 15% is the exact number, pulled out of volunteering, and we had to put paid people in at an average salary of $85,000 a year, the impact on the taxpayers in New Jersey would be over $1.5 billion overnight. But is the state or anyone else sitting there saying, wait a minute, this is a reality that's going to happen? The economy is bad. It doesn't just affect municipal and county employees. It affects all of you, many of you who may be volunteers. They're looking for a second job, more wages, harder to find work, higher requirements for training. So the volunteer ranks are reducing. If that 6.3% approaches the 20% of police, you can't afford to live in New Jersey. And there isn't any state or regional effort or shared service that's going to help it. So what we need to do is focus resources to cultivate those volunteers, encourage them to stay, motivate them to be more involved, and draw more people into it. Give them opportunities, incentives, give them college credits at state institutions, expand the program that gives them resources and funding for their uniforms, give them what they need and the insurance and coverage so that that number does not creep up. And it won't creep up, it'll go up exponentially. So I think we have to look at how we reduce costs, but also recognize that there are ways to stem off the tide of future costs, which at some point or other will be so insurmountable we wouldn't be able to survive. So I thank you for listening. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight.